That is the reason any changes I made on the data will not be automatically conveyed. I have to manually convey the data. Are you getting my point here? Okay. Let me give. When I say procedure-oriented programming, non-procedure-oriented programming, let us take a quick process. I told Ravi, go to parking, take my car, go to Inorbit Mall, go to counter number 2. Prasad is sitting there. Give him this 500 rupees. He'll give you 2 tickets. Collect those 2 tickets. Come back to Capital Info Solution. Give me those 2 tickets. Now, what did I do in this communication? I told to Ravi what is the work he is supposed to do. And also I told him how he was supposed to do. He cannot take a two-wheeler. I told him very clearly, go to the parking, take my car, go to Inorbit Mall, go to counter number 2 only, give the money to Prasad. Prasad will give you 2 tickets, collect them, come back to Capital Info, give me the tickets. I told very clearly what is the work that Ravi is supposed to do and how he was supposed to do. He cannot go to counter number 3. He cannot go to counter number 4. In the counter number 2, other than Prasad, if anybody is sitting, he cannot give the money. I told him very clearly, I gave very clear instructions how he was supposed to do this work. So I gave him the work and I also told him how this work need to be performed. This is called procedure-oriented programming. In the procedure-oriented programming, we convey the work and also we convey how to perform that work. Now, any programming language which has a function or a methods or a procedures, all will be running under procedure-oriented programming, where we write function. Now, when I say login, system cannot log in directly. I have to tell the system, what do you mean by login? Okay, what data you will get, where should I verify, if it is verified, success, to which page I have to go, failure, to which page I have to go. I have to give this instruction to the system, then only it will perform. Am I right or wrong? So unless you give instruction to the system, system will not perform. When I go to ATM, I want to withdraw. When I swipe the card, what is the action that should be performed? Already instructions are given to the machine that according to the instruction it is performing the action. So all this fall under what? Procedure oriented. When I say non-procedure oriented programming, we will specify what is the work that needs to be done, but we will not specify how it needs to be done. Anirban, mute your mic. All of you mute your mics. Anirban, mute your mic.
Yeah, I'm doing.
Right. Then non-procedure oriented programming. When I say non-procedure oriented programming, we will specify what is the work that needs to be performed, but we will not specify how it needs to be performed. Now I told Ravi, get me 2 tickets. When I told Ravi, get me 2 tickets, he may go by 2-wheeler, 4-wheeler, or a bus, or by walk. He can go to Inorbit Mall, or he can go to IMAX, or he can go to GVK. It's up to your choice. Or he may send somebody else. He may book through online. So here I am only giving how to, what work need to be performed. I am not telling him how to be performed. So this is a non-procedure programming language. All your database query languages are non-procedure programming language. Get me all the students' data from database. How to get? I am not giving. I told get me all the student database. Get me all the records from student table. Get me the student table data whose city is Hyderabad. We are only giving instruction. We are not telling how it need to be performed. So your database query languages are non-procedure programming languages. Procedure language, wherever we have functions, it is a procedure oriented language. Now, what is an object oriented programming? Putting your data and actions together into one block will give you object-oriented programming, where priority is given to person, not to the action. Give importance to the person first, then the action. Let me give a quick example. Now, I was waiting at the ticket counter. I went to a movie theater. I want to book a ticket. I was sitting at the waiting at the ticket counter. When I was about to take, my corporator came. Then they told Satish, "Can you wait for a minute?" Corporator came. Let me issue a ticket to you. Now they told me it's a 250 rupees as a ticket. When a corporator came, they told 200 rupees. You can take the ticket first. Then when the corporator is about to take the ticket, same movie, same theater, same ticket. Then MLA came. Then they told corporator, "Can you wait?" Okay, let the MLA take the ticket. Now they gave 150 rupees as a price for a ticket. Then our MP came. They told, "Boss, MLA, can you wait?" Our MP came, pay only 100 rupees. Then our CM staff came. CM boss, it is free of cost. You can take the ticket. Entire theatre is yours. Now what was this? Now we are all going to the same counter, same theater, same ticket we are trying to purchase. The treatment what they are giving is based on the person. Am I right? So when I'm going, they're charging me 250 rupees, right? And when somebody with higher priority is coming, then they ask me to wait. Somebody higher than him is coming, ask him to wait. Now here everybody is making a payment of same amount, but the payment is changing from person to person, depends upon the person. The priorities are changing. Treatment is changing, depends upon the person. Now all of us came for what? Booking a ticket. So all we are performing an action called booking a ticket, but the procedure of booking a ticket is changed. Right? The priorities are coming based on a person. So if the importance is given to an object, then an action, there is object-oriented programming. In object-oriented programming, priority is given to the object than the functionality. Let me take another example just to get the concept right. We are making a generalized examples. Now let us say there are 3 people who are writing an exam. Now, Sham is a 5th class student. These 3 people writing the exam. Which exam they are writing? All of them are writing a 10th class exam. All the 3 people are writing a 10th class exam. Sham got 85 marks. Ram got 95 marks. Prasad got 100 marks. Now tell me who is intelligent student? Right. Now I should ask you, is it object-oriented programming or a procedure-oriented programming? Now if I say it's a procedure-oriented programming, doesn't matter to me who you are. How many marks did you get? 85. How many you got? 95. How many you got? 100. Boss, Prasad, you are intelligent. In the procedure-oriented programming, they don't give importance to the object. They give importance to the functionality only. So let anybody run. Let a Sham run or Ram run or a Prasad run. Doesn't matter. They're only worried about the functionality. So as per the functionality, who is the intelligent student? Whoever has got highest marks, he is the intelligent student. So Prasad is the intelligent student here. If it is an object-oriented programming, they'll ask you first, who are you? Sham. Which class are you studying? 5th class. How many marks you got? 85. Who are you? Ram. Which class? 10th class. How many marks? 95. Like this, they give priority to the person first. Now, according to the object-oriented programming, who is intelligent student here? Sham is the intelligent student. According to the procedure-oriented programming, who is intelligent? Prasad. Why Prasad is intelligent? When I go to procedure-oriented programming, doesn't matter which object it is, which person it is. You give me input, I'll give you output. I'm least bothered about who are you. In the object-oriented programming, first I am worried about who are you. Tell me who are you. According to that, I will give my operations. Are you clear about it? Everyone has got the concept, right? So in the object-oriented programming, higher priority is given to an object than to a procedure, a function. Okay. Now let us dig into one by one properties. A quick overviews. Let me dig into one by one property. Whenever we are going for a object-oriented programming, first we are supposed to understand few technical terms in the object-oriented programming. First term is abstraction. First term is abstraction. What is this abstraction? Now, let me give you basic example. When you go to ATM, right? When you go to ATM, you are trying to withdraw the money. When you are trying to withdraw the money, what will you look at the ATM? What are the services that ATM is giving? You are not worried how they are implementing the functionality in the ATM. Do you ask ATM, boss, if you implement Java, then only I will withdraw. If you are using a database called Oracle, then only I will withdraw the money. Otherwise, I will not withdraw. Will you check that conditions when you go to ATM? We are not interested on how it is running internally. We are only interested on what services that ATM is giving. Boss, withdraw of money, mini statement, deposit of funds, or a payment of bill. I am only worried about what services that ATM is giving. I am least bothered about how it is providing the service. I am not worried about how it is implementing. I am only worried about what type of services it is giving. So what is this called? Abstract. We are only interested on the list of services, what they are providing. We are not interested on how they are providing. Are you getting my point? Now we are using a mobile phone. When you use a mobile phone, do you check when you click on a green button how the signal is going, how the phone is connecting to some other? Internally, what is the IEEE format they are using? Is a bandwidth of 802 or 804? Are you looking at all this stuff? We are not worried about all that. According to our service, mobile means we can make an outgoing call, receive an incoming call, send SMS, use internet, Facebook, bus. We are not worried about how internally it is functioning because we are only looking at abstraction. Are you getting my point? When you say abstraction, what is the meaning? What is the meaning of abstraction? We are only looking at the list of services, what they are offering. We are not worried about how they are implemented. Let us say one more example. One more example I am taking. Sridhar, mute your mic. Please, all of you, mute your mics when you are in the class. Do not disturb the class. Now, look at the format. When you are going for this, I told, look at the format. When I'm putting my resume, I'm giving my resume. Now, when I'm putting my resume, if I have 12 years of experience, will I put all the code what I wrote in my resume? Boss, in the last 12 years, this is the code what I wrote. This is my experience. No, generally we give, this is the project, this is my area of work. Now, what we are doing? Only giving extra abstraction of the information. We are not giving the implementation part. Abstract, a quick view of the services. Are you getting my point here? So, what is an abstract? What is an abstract? What is your JNTU definition? Showing the required information and hiding the rest of the information. 16 by 16, right? So, what is the abstraction? What is the meaning of abstraction? It is showing the required information, hiding the rest of the information. What is that required information? List of services, what they are offering. The list of services, what they are offering, and they are going to hide how they are implemented. Are you clear about this? Right, Amma? Okay. Let us go to the next term. What is the next term we had? We have encapsulation. What is this encapsulation? When I say encapsulation, putting the data and actions together into a single entity is called encapsulation. Putting the data and actions together into one entity is called encapsulation. When I say putting the data and action, it is a concept of class. It is a concept of class. So the concept of class is derived from a encapsulation. Encapsulation means putting the data and their actions, services along with the implementation. The data along with the services and their implementation. So it is a data with a list of services along with their implementation. Interface, like abstraction is what? Abstraction is what? Only list of services. From the concept of abstraction, interface concept is derived. Abstraction is given to a concept called interfaces. Encapsulation is given to a concept called class. Concept of class is derived from encapsulation. What is that? Combination of data and the list of services and their implementation. In short, data along with their actions. So what is encapsulation? It is a combination of putting the data and actions together into a single entity is called encapsulation. From the concept of encapsulation, what did we get? We got a concept of class. What is abstraction? It is a list of services without their implementation. It is a list of services offered without their implementation. So the concept of abstraction has given derivation to interfaces. I hope you're good with this, right? Am I clear? Data and actions together is called encapsulation. Right. Third one we have polymorphism. What is this polymorphism? Now let me make it. These three people went to a restaurant. Right. Yeah, it's the first class. Now, these three people went to a restaurant. They want to have their dinner and they want to pay the bill. Now, what they are doing? They went to a restaurant and they're having their dinner. They want to pay the bill. This guy is very much comfortable in paying cash. Okay, by making a payment by cash. He is interested to make payment by credit card. Somebody is interested to make payment by debit card. Now what these three people are doing? Payment of bill. All these three people are doing what? Payment of bill. But the way they are making a payment is different. But what is the action? Action is payment of bill. So he is paying by cash, he is paying by credit card, he is paying by debit card. If my company says, if my restaurant says, I will only accept a credit card, then what happened? I will be losing rest of the customer. If my hotel says, I will accept only cash, I will lose rest of the customer. So what these people have done to make this service better and easy for the customers, to make this service more easy for the customers, what they have done, they define the same service in multiple formats. Same service defined in multiple formats, right? So if you define same service in more than one format, that is called polymorphism, representing same action in multiple ways. Which is called polymorphism. I'm just giving a overview to get into the topic. So what is a polymorphism? Representing same action more than one way. Let us say these three people want to propose to their corresponding girlfriends. Now, did the government of India issue any GO saying that this is only the way you have to propose? No, right? Whichever the way he is comfortable, he will propose. He want to propose by flower, he want to propose by debit card, he want to propose by gift. Now it depends upon your choice. But what is the action they are doing? Their action is a proposing. Their action is a proposal, but the way they are implementing is different. Now they are saying, boss, same service can be defined in multiple ways to make it user friendly. Same service can be defined in more than one way to make it user friendly. This concept is called polymorphism. Representing same action in more than one way is called polymorphism. I hope you're good. We'll discuss in detail. Okay, just a quick overview. Next one, what is that? Inheritance. What is this inheritance? What is this inheritance? Now, concept of reusability. Concept of reusability. Let us say, today you are absent for a class. Now, you will take, now there are two ways. When you are absent for a class, there are two categories of students. Tomorrow, one student will come take xerox of the yesterday's class. Another student will come, he will write entire notes. Boss, it is a development first session. We are going with a OOPS basics. Just started the OOPS basics. Any queries are there, I'll be answering at the end of the session. But if anybody has any query, unmute your mic and ask. Do not message. Message will be disturbing the class. If anyone has a query, unmute your mic and ask the question. Straight away ask the question. Do not type the messages. If anyone has any query, unmute the mic and ask the question. If any other thing apart from the class, I'll answer your queries at the end. At the end of the session, I'll be answering your queries. If anybody is new, at the end, I'll be answering your queries. Right. Now, what is one person is taking a xerox. Now, what he is doing? Boss, I don't want to write the notes again. Already it is available. Let me take a xerox. Then I'll add extra points on that. The second guy, he is writing each and everything. The 1 hour notes what I have given, he is writing it. Now, which is easier? Xerox. Why? Boss, when something is already readily available, why you want to rewrite? If you just copy it, it is reducing your time. If you take a xerox of it, whatever that is missing on the xerox, if we can add extra points, we can use it. Am I right? So what is this? Reuse. What is this? Reuse. Inheritance is nothing but a concept of reusability. Now I took this room in 2011 or 2012. I took this room. When I took this classroom, my class strength was only around 25 members. Then this building has 4 partitions in the classroom. It's somewhere 2011, 2012 when I started my Salesforce training. I used to take only one batch in the morning before office. So there's only 25 members in the class. So this is a room with 4 partitions. One classroom, HR room, another this thing. Then slowly the strength moved to 50. I removed one cabin. Strength moved to 100. 2 cabins I removed. Strength moved to 200. Entire room I vacated. Made a single room. Now when I took this room, some partitions are there. Now as per my requirement on the day, whatever the partitions are there, whatever the room is there, is 100% perfect to my requirement. Then what I have done, I took the same room, I fixed some projector. As only 25 members, one projector is sufficient for me. I kept one projector and I used this room. As the strength grown to 100, I fixed 2 projectors. I removed 2 cabins. I kept only 1 cabin for myself and remaining I gave. Now in 2017, strength moved to 200 members. I removed entire thing. I brought one more extra TV, projectors, additional fittings. Now what is this? I am not vacating this room. I am trying to reuse this room. Are you getting my point? So when I took this room, whatever the structure is there, according to that day, the structure is very much suitable to me. So I took this room, and whatever that is not existing in this room, whatever the services are not existing, like projectors, ACs, fans, screen, everything I brought, I fixed it. Later on, when my requirement changed, what did I do? Now whatever the thing that is existing here, which is not according to my requirement, I removed it. I modified according to my choice. Now what I'm doing, it is a reusability concept. When something is already existing, why you want to build extra? Why you want to build extra? When something is existing, why you want to build extra? Reuse it. Reuse it. Right. Now, if some service is already existing, try to use it. The existing service is not suitable to you, redefine it. If you want any extra services, create it. So when something is already existing, use whatever that is suitable. If something is not suitable in the existing functionality, redefine that functionality. Instead of writing entire thing, it is easy to rewrite the things which are not suitable to you. If you want any extra services, you can create it. So this concept is called inheritance. Concept of reusability. Concept of reusability is called inheritance. Right? When some class is existing, some code is existing, why you want to write again and again? Instead of writing again, try to reuse the existing code which is already existing. This concept is called inheritance. So what is your JNTU definition, boss? Acquiring the properties of one class by another class is called inheritance. Right. So textbook definition. Now, what is the concept of inheritance? Reusability. So what are the properties of your OOPS? Abstraction, encapsulation, polymorphism, inheritance. What is abstraction? Okay, showing the list of services, hiding their implementation is called abstraction. What is encapsulation? Putting the data and actions together into one entity is called your encapsulation, or else data along with the list of services and their implementation. What is polymorphism? Representing same service in more than one way. Representing same service in more than one way. What is inheritance? Concept of reusability. So with these four concepts, we are going to learn entire OOPS. So object-oriented programming system. Object-oriented programming system. Okay. So basically we understood about what is a procedure-oriented programming, what is a non-procedure oriented programming, what is a OOPS, what are the technical terms we had in the OOPS. Basic idea, right? Okay. Now let us start our programmatical approach. If you want to learn any programming language, let it be a C, C++, Java, .NET or any programming, everybody has to start their learning from lexicon. Irrespective of which language it is, our programming starts with a lexicon. Okay. Now, before I am starting the programming, I am making very clear to the people, boss, people who are very new to the programming, if you are taking the first time, you will understand it, but the experience what you are putting, okay, you will not be gaining that experience. At the end of the game, if you are able to write the program with the speed of what the people expect, then only your course is worth for you. The money and time what you are spending is worthful to you only if you are able to write a program by your own at the end of the course. If you are simply going, listening to the class, taking the program, executing my own programs, copy paste it, execute it, output you are getting, it is of no use. Because I hope everyone is, almost all these 150 or 180 people, all of your employees, except 5 or 10 people, almost all of your employees. So everybody is going to put almost 3 to 4 years of experience, right? So if you are just going through my programs, executing my programs will not give you knowledge. Now there are some exercises given. I will be giving some exercises. If you are implementing those exercises and if you are able to write a program by your own, then only you will be able to put that experience what you are looking. By simply understanding my program, you will not gain the experience, right? So here in the classroom, after every topic, I will be giving an exercise in the class itself. So after every topic, I will be making you to write a program in the class. All the topics, whatever I covered, at the end we will be taking 1 or 2 exercises. I will be making you to write. If you make a sincere attempt of writing those programs, okay, you will get the required skills of writing. After end of every topic, I will be spending the time in making you to write a programs on the same topics what I covered. I will be giving some exercises. If you make a sincere attempt in writing those programs, then you'll be getting the skill. I'm making very clear. If you understand my program, it is of no use for you. Only if you are able to write your own program, it will be useful. Right? People who are coming from completely non-programmatical background has 0% knowledge on the program. So first time when you listen, you will get what is programming, what the concepts are. But if you have a time, I suggest the people to take a repetition of the development. We'll be allowing 2 more batches for repetition. The people who are taking the class will allow 2 more batches free of cost for repetition. So people who are completely new to the programming, I suggest 500% I ask them to take repetition. So that, again I told you, when you understand, it's of no use. When you take a repetition, you make attempt of writing it. Because you're writing it for the first time and most of your employees, you will not get much time for your practice. So better you take a repetition also. for the development, so that next time when you listen, you'll be able to write a program. People who have some basics, who are able to adopt it, is very good. I'm speaking about the people who is unable to adopt the programming skills in the first session. In the session 1 itself, the first time when you take a course, if you are unable to attempt, I suggest you to take a repetition. We'll be allowing 2 more batches for development, so you can take the repetition. People who are completely new with 0% development knowledge, that even you follow the class, you understood how to write a program also, still I suggest you to go for taking a repetition, as if you want to put 3 or 4 years of experience, understanding will not be suitable. Okay, you are supposed to build the program with the same speed what this guy is going to build. So completely new to the programming, take the repetition also. I'm making very clear, people who are completely new to the programming, I suggest you to go for repetition classes, and we'll be allowing 2 more batches for repetition. Right. Second, I'm making the things very clear at the beginning only. If I make you to write a programs in the class, duration may slightly increase. If you are okay with that, I'll make you to write a programs in the class. The point is, the only purpose is, if you keep on completing the topics, you're listening and going, now you don't get any skills of learning this, like a theory it goes. Right? If you make an attempt of writing a program in the class, at least the syntax format purpose you'll be knowing. Later when you get a time, you can practice it. If you just listen to all the topics without writing any program, just become a theory, and at the end of the game, it will not be any useful thing. Okay, because people who get a time to practice, okay, but as I told you, most of your employees, you'll not be getting a time to practice. So that's the reason all the topics, whatever I'm completing on the day, at the end I'll be taking 1 or 2 program and I'll making you to write the code. Right. But if I'm using this format, slightly the duration may increase. If it is okay for everyone, then I'll make it. Right? Is it okay for everyone? I'm making it at the beginning only, because at the end the complaints will be coming. So already you told 3 months, it's already right. This type of complaints. If everybody is okay with that, I'll go with. Right. So that at least when you write 1 or 2 program in the class, at least you know what topics you learned. At the end, you should not tell me what is Salesforce, I don't know. Right. Okay. The third point, you'll be learning the development only when you stop writing your notes. So if you want to be a developer, first stop copying the program, stop writing the notes. If you are spending in writing a notes, you're not concentrating on my explanation. Then you're very busy in writing everything on the books. Nobody is going to publish your books. Even you don't understand what you written. After the class, if you open your programs, what you wrote, even you don't understand it. So stop copying the programs or whatever. I'm going to give my username, password, the account in which I'm writing the notes, like your administration, I'll be writing the notes in the account, right? And I'm going to give username, password. Every program I write, that will be there in the account. So no need to copy the programs in your book. I'm giving the username, password straight away. Whatever the programs I'm giving the class, you can log into my account, take that program and execute. Purpose of giving that account is, if you copy the program on your book, you don't know how it executes. If you log into my account and execute the program, you know what the procedure is. But if you put the program onto your book, you never know how it executes. Okay, you only get theoretical format. If you stop copying, log into my account, execute the program before you copy, you know what is happening in the functionality. At least you get a view of what we explain. Right. So stop copying the programs, stop writing the notes, and keep taking it. Now your videos will be available. One day it will be delayed. Your videos of the class, whatever I'm taking, probably at max 1 day it will be delayed, or by next day it will be uploaded. So whatever the class that is I'm taking right now, that will be uploaded to the site, maybe 1 day delayed, because the conversion process will take almost 3 to 4 hours per video. Conversion and uploading to the site will take almost 3 to 4 hours. So maybe 1 day it may be delayed, but next day the video will be available. The same class what I'm taking for you, it will be available on the site on the next day. Okay, so you can go through the videos for revision. So stop writing the notes, listen to my conversation. Whenever I'm giving the exercise, make an attempt of writing a program. Make an attempt of writing a program. Again, I'm repeating one more time. At the end of the course, if you're unable to write your program, the money and the time, more than the money, the time is wasted. Right. So 2 months of time and almost fees what you're paying, it will go waste. So make a sincere attempt in writing a program, what I'm giving in the class. Right. Exercise. If you don't follow, just ask me, I'll help you out. I'll help you out in writing the program. When I give exercise, I'll be available, I'll be roaming in the class. So whoever is finding difficult, let me know. I can help you out in writing the program. Right. This I am making very clear. If you are going with writing a program, duration may be slightly increased. Basically, if duration is increased, problem is not for you, problem is for me. If I close the batch, I'll start one more batch. Right? As simple as that. Right. So second one is stop writing the notes. I'm going to give you a hard copy. I'm going to type each and everything in the account. For that account, I'm going to give username, password. Third one, every program will be in the account. No need to copy. So if you stop writing your notes, copying the programs and listening to my conversation, it will be helpful to you. Right. The next, online people, do not disturb the class during the topic. Once I complete the theory, allow me to complete the theory. Once I complete entire theory, almost all your queries will be completed. Only the point is, when I start the topic, if you start interrupting, whatever the points I'm going to cover at the end, if you ask me at the between, people who are following the topic, they'll be disturbed. So ask me the questions related to the theory only after the end of the topic. When I'm covering the topic, only at the end of the topic, ask me the question, so that whatever the question you're going to ask, that I'm going to cover maybe in the between or last. So if you interrupt my class, the people who are following sequentially, they'll be losing it, because you ask some random question, we'll go out of the topic, the discussion goes somewhere. So at the end of every topic, I'll give a time for asking a question, maybe a theory of 10 or 15 minutes. At the end, I'll be giving a time for asking. While I'm explaining the program, while I'm writing the program, if you have any question at any point of time, you can break me. But when I'm going for a theory, do not interrupt me during the theory. Allow me to complete the theory till the end of the topic. Then you can ask me the question. While I'm writing the program, if you didn't follow at any point of time, any line, you can stop and ask me. Program, you can stop at any time, but theory, allow me to complete till the end of the topic, so that most of your questions, whatever you're asking, will be covered, will be answered by the time I complete the theory. But only the point is, the point of what I'm going to cover at the end, you're going to interrupt and ask in the between. That's a problem, because we have a huge crowd, we cannot disturb the class. Right. So at the end of the theory, ask me the question. Programming, at every line, at every variable I create, you can interrupt me and ask, because every line of program, you should understand why I'm writing. Theory, please do ask me at the end of the session, end of the topic. Right. And online people, if anyone has any query, do not type the messages, unmute your mic and ask the question. That is also after the end of the topic. Only at the end of the topic, ask me the question. Right. Right. Any other queries from your end? Good. Okay. So let us go back to the first topic of the programming. Let us start the first topic. Every programming language will start with lexical. What is a lexical? What is the purpose of this lexical? What is a lexical? What is the purpose of this lexical? Now listen to this statement. I have a variable, integer, a value equal to b value plus 10. This is a statement. Any line I write is a statement. So I have given integer, a value equal to b value plus 10. Then this statement, I am breaking them into number of segments. What I am doing here, whatever that I am writing here, the statement, I am breaking them into number of segments. The statement is broken down into number of segments, where no segment can be redivided. It is the smallest segment. I cannot break any more segments. Now the given statement is broken down into number of segments in such a way that no segment can be subdivided. Such a segment is called lexical. Now every segment is called lexical. I is a lexical, N is a lexical, T is a lexical, A is a lexical, equal to is a lexical, plus is a lexical, semicolon is a lexical. We are breaking the statement into number of segments in such a way that no segment can be redivided. Such a segment is called lexical. Every lexical may have a meaning, may not have a meaning. I doesn't have a meaning. Equal to has a meaning. Plus has a meaning. E doesn't have a meaning. A doesn't have a meaning. V doesn't have a meaning. So segment may have, may not have meaning associated with it. Every lexical may have, may not have meaning associated with it. So what is a lexical? Given statement broken down into small segments in such a way that no segment can be redivided again. No segment has a possibility of redivision. Such a segment is called lexical. Lexical may have meaning associated with it or may not have meaning associated with it. In general, we call these lexicals as characters. In the general programming, what people are going to call characters. What people are going to call characters. So lexical is nothing but a character. So what is a lexical? Smallest unit of programming. Smallest unit of programming. So in our programmatical terminology, what we call this as character. In our programming terminology, what we call it as character. I hope you are clear. So let me give you what is the lexical. Given statement broken into number of small in such a way that no segment can be such a segment is called lexical. Every lexical may or may not have every lexical may or may not have meaning associated with it. The given statement is broken down into a number of small segments in such a way that no segment can be redivided. Such a segment is called a lexical. Every lexical may or may not have meaning associated with it. Right. Example, this is an example. Now we are calling lexical can be called as character. Lexical is also called as next. We have token. What is a token? When I say token, same statement. Integer, a value equal to b value plus. The given statement is broken down into small segments. Integer, a value equal to b value. Given statement is broken down into small segments in such a way that every segment has meaning associated with it. Integer, there is a meaning. A value, there is a meaning. Equal to b value plus 10 semicolon. The given statement is broken down into small segments in such a way that every segment has meaning associated with it. Such a segment is called token. Tokens are classified into 5 formats. What are they? Now let us say token. Now we have integer is a keyword. We have a value is an identifier. Equal to operator. We have b value plus operator 10 constant semicolon separator. So if you look at these, tokens are classified into 5 types. What are they? Keyword, identifier, operator, constant, separator. So every token is classified into, tokens are classified into 5 types: keywords, identifier, operator, constant, and separator. This is the format. So I can call token as collection of lexicals. Collection of lexicals which form a meaningful word is called a token. So what we can give here? Given statement is broken down into small segments in such a way that every segment has meaning associated with it. Such a segment is called token. Now, tokens are classified 5 types. Tokens are classified into 5 types. What are they? First, I will start with constant. Then we have separator, identifier, keyword. Right. This is the example of what is our discussion. The example of our discussion. I hope you are clear with this format. So every programming will start with lexical. Every program will start with a lexical. Lexical is nothing but a character. Token, it is a collection of lexicals or segment which has a meaning associated with it. So tokens are classified as a constant, separator, identifier, keyword, and operator. Fine. Let us start with one by one. Next we have, what are these keywords? Why we are going to use it? Now, let us see. What is the meaning of ECE? When I go to any engineering college and I say ECE, they say electronics. When I say computer, CSC, computer science, right? Now, what is this? This meaning of this word is fixed in terms of engineering. If I go to a bank, when I say word deposit, withdraw, PF account, saving account, current account, the meaning is same. Let me go to any bank. If I say debit card, credit card, saving account, PF account, current account, meaning is same. Because according to the banking terminology, the meaning of these words is already fixed. Let anybody use it. Let any bank use it. The meaning of the word is fixed. So according to the banking terminology, they have defined some words whose meaning is fixed according to the banking terminology. Now when you are going for a WhatsApp, in the chatting also some, okay, shortcut symbols will be there, right? Shortcut. Now what is that? Let anybody use it, meaning is the same. Now somebody use a DP, okay, they are using some shortcut words in the chatting, right? That is, everybody knows it. Now what is it? These are the words whose meaning is predefined. Let anybody use it. Let anybody use it, the meaning is the same. Such type of words are called keywords. Now, according to this programming language also, according to the Salesforce programming language also, there are some words whose meaning is fixed. Let anybody use these words in the Apex programming, the meaning is same. Let you use these words anywhere in the program, the meaning of these words are same, they will not change. Such type of words are called keywords. As I told you, according to the bank, deposit, withdraw, PF, salary, current account, salary account, okay, these are the words what they have defined, which is fixed, and let anybody use it, meaning is the same. Similarly, in the programming language also, they will have, every programming language will have their own predefined words. Let anybody use these words, meaning is fixed. Such type of words are called keywords. Are you clear? So what are these keywords? These are the reserved words. whose meaning is predefined by the compiler. Meaning of these words doesn't change irrespective of where we use. Irrespective of where we use in the program. All the keywords are in lowercase. All the keywords cannot be used as identifier names. Example. So tell me some of the keywords you know. Class, interface, try, catch, if, else, for, then with, without, static, public, private, global, right? This like this, we have some predefined keywords. There are almost 130 plus. Let us not by heart them. We'll use as for the topic. So all these are what? Keywords. These are the words which are defined by the Salesforce. Let you use these words anywhere in the Apex programming. Meaning is the same. I hope you are good with this. Okay. Now let us go to the next one. Constant. What do you mean by constant? Now, if I write 10. Now, what is the value of this? 10. Okay, after 10 days, if I run also, what is the value? 10. Let you run the program, or I run the program, or somebody else run the program. What is the value? 10. Is this value can change? Now, when I give a value, it will not change. Elements whose value cannot be altered. Elements whose value cannot be altered during the runtime of a program, they are called constants. If I give name Satish, now that cannot be modified. Now let you run anytime, the value will be Satish only. Elements whose value cannot be altered, that is called constant. Elements whose value cannot be altered is called constant. Now your surname constant, first name constant, date of birth constant. Now your qualification can be altered, age can be altered, qualification can be altered, age can be altered, address can be altered, your experience can be altered, technology can be altered. Now these are what? Variables. Now which cannot be altered? Your date of birth, your first name, your last name, father name, mother name, right? This cannot be altered. The rest of the things can be altered. If which can be altered are called variables, which cannot be altered are called constants. Which can be modified are called constant. Okay, which cannot be modified are called constant. Which can be modified is called variable. Are you clear about this? Are you clear? So according to you, your first name, last name never change throughout your life. Your date of birth will never change throughout your life. Rest all the parameters can be changed time to time, depends upon the context. Am I right? Okay. So what is a constant? Any element in the program, any elements whose values altered during the runtime of the program are called constant. Right. So constants are classified. Constants are classified into numerical constant, string constant, Boolean constant. Now, what is this numerical constant? Any value that can be formed, formed using digits 0 to 9 with or without decimal point and with or without sign. Are called numerical constant. So what is that example? So any value that can be formed with or without sign, any value, numerical value that can be found with or without decimal point with a combination of digits 0 to 9 is called numerical constant. Basically, it's a value. It is a value. Any value that you can form with the digits 0 to 9 with or without decimal, with or without sign is called numerical constant. Then string constant. What is a string constant? String constant. Any value that can be formed with a collection of characters surrounded by single quote. Any value that is formed with the collection of characters surrounded by single quote Now, example. Any value that can be formed with a collection of characters surrounded by single quote is called string. So, Boolean constant it takes the value of true and false. This is how we are forming. So, keywords are the words whose meaning doesn't change throughout the program. Keywords are the predefined words or reserved words whose meaning is fixed. Constants are the elements whose values cannot be altered throughout the program. So we have keywords, constants. Then let us go to the next one. We are going with identifiers. What are these identifiers and why we are going to use? Identifier means now in this group of people, if I want to call this particular person, how do I call? I have this group of people. Out of these 180 or 200 people, I want to speak to this first guy who is sitting in the classroom. So how do I call him? I will recognize him with his name. Right? He was identified based on his name. Now when I say, boss, all of you look at the screen, everyone is looking at the screen here. Now what is that? It is a unique name given to this element. Now we are able to identify this element with a name called screen. So identifier is the name given to recognize the element. In the program also, I am writing 10 classes. When you are writing a 10 class, how do you recognize every class separately? They should have some name. Now I have 100 variables. How do you recognize each and every variable? I have a name. I have 40 methods. How do you recognize? They should have a name. So identifiers are the names given to a class or a interface or a method or a variable or a constant to recognize them uniquely in the programming. What are these identifiers? Let me give you. Identifiers are the names given to a class, interface, method, variable or constant to recognize elements uniquely in the program. Identifiers are the names given to a class or a interface or a method or a variable or a constant to recognize the elements uniquely in the programming. So it can be a variable name, class name, or a method name, or a constant name. Now we have a question here. When you are giving a unique names, how do you give the names? If you want to give a name to your son or a daughter, will you give Ravi underscore at the rate of 456? No, right? So when you are giving a names to your human beings, when you are giving a name to a human being, we follow certain rules. Similarly, when you are giving a identifier name, they also have certain rules which we are supposed to obey. So what are those rules? Rules to define identifiers. First rule, name contain alphabets A to Z, digits 0 to 9, and dollar and underscore. Identifier name can contain alphabets, digits, dollar and underscore. Name should not start with a digit. When you're defining an identifier name, it can contain alphabets, digits and dollar underscore. And name should not start with a digit. You can give anything of your choice. So we can have identifier names. Name should not start with a digit. So basic property, what are these? Identifiers are the names given to a class, interface, method, variable and a constant to recognize them uniquely in the programming. They can contain the alphabets, digits, underscore, dollar. Are you clear about this point? Now let us take the next point. Any identifier name should obey any one of the naming convention. Any identifier name should obey any one of the following naming convention. What are they? Upper camel, lower camel, lowercase, uppercase. Your program should speak your experience. So there are good practices of writing a programming. One of the good practices is following the naming conventions. So your program should speak your experience, and to speak your experience, you should obey the good practices of writing a program. One of the good practice is following the naming conventions while writing a program. So what are these naming conventions? What are these upper camel, lowercase, uppercase? Let's understand one by one. Your identifier name should be in any one of the following 4 formats. First one, we have uppercase, upper camel. Now, what is the purpose of this upper camel? If you want to give name to a class or a interface, it should be defined in the upper camel only. Name of the class, name of the interface should be in the upper camel. If you don't follow, it will not throw error. But it's our good practice to follow the naming conventions. If you don't follow, it will not throw error. But it is a good practice to follow the naming convention. So what is upper camel? In case if I want to give name to a class or a interface, it has to be defined in the upper camel. When I say upper camel, what happened? Every word first letter should be capital. Now look at this. U capital, C capital. Now what is upper camel? In this naming convention, every word first letter should be. This is used define names for class and interface. This is used to define the names for class and interface. Right. So every word first letter should be capital. So in case if there is any, if it is a combination of two words, separate them by underscore. If name is a combination of separate them simple example pause. Same thing I am giving here. Now tell me which is easy to identify, employee underscore data or employee data, right? So it's a good practice. Whenever you write a program, the funda is the person who is next to you. You're writing a program. Now whoever is going to work after you on that program, you should get the understanding of the program very clearly. That is the reason you should write your program to make sure that the next guy who is working on the same program should find it very easy to update or modify. So follow the standard terminologies, standard functionalities. Right. Then we have lower camel. Lower camel. What is the purpose of lower camel? First word, first letter will be small. Remaining words, first letter will be capital. First word, first letter is small. Remaining word, first letter should be capital. When we are going to use this lower camel, if you want to give a name to a variable or a method, variable names or a method names are given with a lower camel. Variable names and method names are given with a lower camel. So what is this lower camel? In this naming convention, first word, first letter is small. And these are used to define the names for variables and methods. So variable names and method names are defined with the lower camel. Age, employee salary. Get details. Now, if it is a combination, then what is it? First word, first letter should be small. Remaining words, first letter should be capital. Employee salary, E small, salary capital. Get record type info, G small, R capital, T capital, I capital. Right? When you are defining names for a variable or a method, we are supposed to go for lower camel format. Lower case. lowercase. Every letter should be small. In this, when we use, if you want to define a name for a packages, we go with a lower camel. So what was the lower camel? Lowercase in this naming convention. Should be small. This is used for this naming convention. This naming convention is used for defining names for variable, names for packages. Right. Last, uppercase. So in this uppercase, every word, every letter should be capital. When we use this, if you want to define name for a constant, if you want to define a name for a constant, we go for upper camel. In this naming convention, every word, every letter should be capital. Right. This naming convention is used to define the names for constants. Example. Right. Max value, min value. Okay. This is how we are going to give. If you want to go for a constant names, uppercase. Package names, lowercase. If you want to go with upper camel, lower camel. Class and interface, lower camel is variable and methods. So like this, identifier names are given. What are these identifiers? These are the names given to a class or a interface, a method, method, variable and constant to recognize them uniquely in the programming. I hope you are good with this. Right. Last one. What is that? Separators. What is the purpose of separators? They are used to separate the elements. Last one we had is separator. They are used to separate the elements. They are used to separate now. Let us see symbol. What are the separators we have? First, floor bracket. This is called scope. Functional braces. Then we have array braces. Then we have comma. Right. So we are going to give, these are the things which we are going to use here. So floor braces, functional braces, array braces, comma, colon, period, semicolon. So these are used to separate the elements. These are used to separate the elements. These are used to separate the elements. So these are separators. Basically what we are using, we have tokens. Now, given statement is broken down into number of segments in such a way that every segment has a meaning for it. Such a segment is called token. Tokens are classified into your identifiers, keywords, constants, separators, operators. Then we started looking at each and every functionality, right? Now you can access these nodes from this account.